This bustier hack will make your plunge neckline look professionally tailored. Today, I'll show you how to make a plunge neckline bustier with flawless yoke. Hi guys, welcome back to my channel. Have you been struggling to fix a plunge neckline on a bustier? On today's drafting and sewing, we'll be learning how to make this beautiful plunge neckline bustier from start to finish. So first of all, we'll start drafting by marking our neckline. I'll mark 3 by 3 for my neckline measurement, then I'll mark my shoulder. I brought my shoulder down to my armhole. So to get your armhole, you divide your bust measurement by 6 plus 1.5. Then I'll just rule and connect on a straight line to make sure that it is equal. Then I also rule my shoulder down to my armhole. Then I'll use my curve ruler to connect my neckline. For my front shoulder slope, I'll be using 1 inch. Then I'll just connect. You can use 1.5 since it's a net, but 1 inch was fine by me. Then I marked out my bust point, my shoulder to my bust point, and then my shoulder to my under bust. And I also mark my shoulder to my half length. Now the half length of my front is different from that of my back. My front half length is longer than that of my back with 2 inches, so I'll just rule. Then I'll also mark out the length of my blouse. You can use whatever length you choose. I didn't make my blouse too long because it's just a tutorial, just for tutorial purpose. So I just ruled everything on a straight line. So I marked out my armhole, my bust points, my under bust, my half length, and my blouse length. Now for my chest line, I'll be going up by 1.5 inch. I'll be using that 1.5 inches for my over bust. That is wherever you want your opening to start from. You know, when you fix your yoke, there's a part that the yoke starts from. If you want your yoke to start from your chest line, it's fine, but I wanted mine to go up with 1.5 inch, so I just ruled a temporary line up there. That is where I will start plotting my yoke from. So that is my over bust line there. So now I'm going to be marking my nipple to nipple measurement. I will start from the over bust line. I'll mark it all the way down to my blouse length. Then I will just rule it with a straight line. So now this is my bust band measurement, my nipple to nipple measurement. Now from the over bust, I'll be coming in by 1 inch on both sides. Then for the under bust, I'll be going in by 1.25 on both sides. Now it depends. If the person is very busty, if the client is very busty, you can use 1 inch at the over bust, then 1.5 on the under bust. Now if it's a client that is not busty, you don't need it to be too deep. You can use 0.75 at the over bust and then 1 inch on the under bust, so that the cup is not too deep if the person is not busty. So it varies according to the bust size. Now for this one, I'm just making my under bust 1.25 because it's just I'm busty but not extremely busty, so it depends on the client. It doesn't have to be the same for everybody. So now I'll bring that 1.25 all the way down to the blouse length and I'll just mark. Then I will rule with a straight line. So I've connected it. You can, at that part where you are starting the connection from, you can just make it blend a little bit, so you can blend it on both sides so it is not too sharp. Now I'll divide my bust measurement by 4, and whatever I have, I will mark it on the chest line, and then I'll add the darts that I took out from there. So whatever I have, I'll first of all add it, my bust measurement divided by 4. I'll mark it and then I'll add whatever I have. Or you can also do it this way, just mark up to half of what you have, then extend it to the other part of the dart and also mark it. Or you can simply just mark and then calculate what you have there and add to it. I will do the same thing for the under bust, and I will do the same thing for the half length and for my blouse length as well. Mark whatsoever that you have for your measurement divided by 4, then check what you have on the part of the dart and add it. Then also add your seam allowance. So I'll first of all mark everything out and I'll shape it before adding my seam allowance. You can add as much seam allowance as you like, but 2 inches should be the max. It shouldn't be more than 2 inches because there's really no point. So now I'm just going to mark my seam allowance all the way to my blouse length, and then I'll reconnect with my ruler. Now after that, I'll come down to my bust points and I'll put the difference between my front and my back half length measurement, which is 2 inches. Then I'll bring it from my bust point, I'll mark 2 inches downwards. So I'll just use my ruler to connect it straight to my nipple to nipple line, to my bust band line. So now that is our bust that I will be taking in before transferring to fabric. So on the side, I'll just come out by at least 1/2 inch so if I fold in the bust that I will still have something there. I don't have a shortage, but all the same, if you still have a shortage when you fold it in, you can still add to it with a paper or just add it on the fabric when cutting. So now I'm just going to mark half of my armhole measurement to form my armhole curve. Then I'll go in by half an inch. I'll connect it with a straight line, and then I'll use the curve line to connect to my original bust measurements, not the allowance. I'll just use the curve to connect it to the original bust measurement. Now on this part that is straight, you won't leave it straight, you will have to make it to blend to the armhole. So this is how I'll just use my armhole curve to just blend it a bit, so that it's not just straight or too sharp. The shape won't be looking fine. So now I'm going to be plotting my plunge neckline. So I'll just use my pencil. You can plot it however you want. So I'll just use my pencil now to plot it. So I'll first of all mark where I want the plunge neckline to stop, and it is just 1 inch above my under bust. So I'll start plotting with my pencil. I'll just do a little rough sketch, and then I'll measure to be sure if the opening at the chest line is not too wide, and the one at the that under bust is not too wide as well. I'll just make sure that the one at the under bust is just half an inch, so that by the time I open it, it is just at least 1 inch, or you can make it 0.25. By the time you open it, it's going to be 1 inch. Now I'm trying to check for the upper part, so it is not too open. I made sure that it wasn't more than 1.25. If not, if you make it too wide, like 2 inches, by the time you open it, it's going to be having 4 inches opening, so your boobs might just be too opened. So now I've done that, and then I use my marker pen now to reshade, reconnect it, so that you can see the lines very well. Now this was it by the time I was done plotting. So now I'm going over to the back, and then for the back I'll just mark my neckline and my shoulder as well. I'll first of all mark out 1 inch before marking my measurements. The 1 inch will be my zipper allowance, so that I don't need to be adding that when I want to transfer to fabric. I'll just mark everything on the paper. So this 1 inch is just for my zipper allowance. Now I'm marking my neckline away from the 1 inch, my neckline and my shoulder. So I also marked my chest line as well, the same way I did for the front, and then I reconnected, and I reconnect from my shoulder down to my armhole. So now my depth for my neckline, I'm using 1 inch for my neck depth, and then I will connect all the way to the zipper allowance for the neck depth. So I'm going to come down by 1 inch as well for the shoulder slope for the back. Now with a net, you can come down lower than that if your net is very stretchy. But if you are using a fabric for the yoke, there's no point, you can maintain this. So I'm marking the half length, and then I'll mark the blouse length as well. So after that, I'll mark 1/4 of my bust measurement divided by 4, and add whatsoever I have, and I'll do the same for my blouse length and my half length as well. Then I'll mark my nipple to nipple measurement. I'll be using it for the back dart, but for the back dart I'll come down by 1 inch from this chest line to mark my dart. Then I will go in for the dart leg half an inch on both sides, and I will reconnect. So now we just impute my measurements on the waistline and add whatsoever that I used for the darts as well. I'll add the dart allowance there. Now I will reconnect. So I will do my shoulder slope for the back, my armhole curve for the back. Sorry, I went in by half inch, and then I'll reconnect to the original armhole measurements. Now I'll add my allowance as well. So for the yoke, you can make it in any shape that you want. If you want yours to be deep on the middle of the neck, so for my yoke, that zipper allowance, I'm going to include it for the yoke. So I'll just put the shape however you want it to be. So this whole part I'm shading now is going to be my yoke, so I'll cut it off. So but this part is for my zipper, so I'll go in and do I'll reshape my zipper allowance. I have to rule out my half length line. So now for my zipper, on the half length line I went in by half an inch, then I reconnected from the neck all the way down, since we are going to be using a zipper. Then from that part I came down by 0.2, came out by 0.2. Then that part is where I'm going to be cutting out. the part that I rolled out. So now I'm going to cut everything out and proceed to cutting on fabric. So I first of all cut out the excess for my zipper allowance. So now this is what we have. I'll just separate my yoke from the back pattern. Now this is what we have now. So this is the front pattern drafted, and also we have that of the back as well. Now for the front, I'll first of all notch where I'm going to start inserting my yoke from, so I will know. So I'll also notch it when I transfer to fabric. So I'll just cut everything out, and I'll also close my bust dart for the front. So I'll first of all go ahead to cut out the yoke. So I'm using this net for my yoke for the front and back. So I'll just cut it out without allowance because it's extremely stretchy. If yours is not that stretchy, you can add ½ inch seam allowance. But for this front part, the part where that is going to go to the middle, I'll be adding a little bit of allowance, like just 0.25, nothing too serious, nothing too much. So this is it. Then I'll transfer to fabric my patterns for the front to fabric as well. So for the center front, when I want to cut the center front, I'll be adding allowance like 0.75 or 1 inch to the part that gets where I put this plunge neckline. I'm going to be adding from the under to that part because I'm going to sew it in. So just watch what I'm going to do. So now from that part where I added my plunge, this is where I'm going to be marking my 1 inch all the way down. I'm just going to sew that part in because I will use it as an allowance to help me hold my net when I want to sew it in. So I'll just cut it out on the fabric. I'll also notch it to be sure. So for the parts where I'm going to be sewing nipple to nipple together, I added ½ inch seam allowance. And also for the parts where I'm going to sew the net, aside from this 1 inch, this part where the net is going to go into, I notched that part, take note. So this part where the net is going to go into, I'm also adding ½ inch seam allowance all the way. So you see this part that I extended is where I'm going to sew before adding my net. So I'm going to close my bust dart. And like I said, if you have any shortage, by the time you want to cut it on fabric, you can use an extra piece of paper to just fill it up, or when you want to cut it on fabric, just cut it and add your seam allowance. That should add that part where you have a shortage, just add it on the fabric. So now I'm just going to cut everything out. You see the way I cut that place because there was a shortage there. So I had to just add it on the fabric. You can do it on paper first, but there's no point since I'm doing it on fabric. Now on this part, I'm also adding ½ inch seam allowance that we used to sew the nipple to nipple points together. So after that, I will just set it aside and cut the back. Now we've already added our zip allowance, so there's no point of adding zip allowance. Now where I have my dart, I'm going to notch it so I will know that is where my dart is. So I'm just trying to make sure that I know where to stop my dart. Then I'll use this fabric for my lining. I just added paper stay as interface. So that's what I'll be using to cut my lining. So I'm just marking out the shape that I'll be using to pad my bustier. So I have a detailed tutorial on how to pad your bustier. I'll just include the link in the description box below. So but this is the shape I'll be using to pad my bustier, and I'll make sure that at the top of it I'll be leaving ½ inch, and the part where the net is going to go into, I'll leave ½ inch so it is not too thick, so I can sew through it and it lays flat. Although you can sew it through it if you pad it, but I just want it to lay flat, especially at the part where we have the net. So you take note that I left half an inch at the center front and the upper parts for this side, and the center front I left half an inch at the part where the net is going to pass through. So first of all, now for the center front, I'm just going to put it together, and then I'll go and sew it up to the part where I notched. So I'll just have it this way. So that's what I'll do. I'll just go and sew it. Now I've gone ahead to sew it and I've ironed it. Now this is what I have. So I'll go and join the sides to it to make it a complete bustier. So I'll join the sides to it and then I'll iron. So I've gone ahead to join the sides together. Now this is what I have, but I haven't ironed. I'll just make sure to notch the under bust and notch a few places at the top where I have that curve. So I'll notch it first of all, and then I'll go to my ironing table and iron it very well. So like I said, I have a detailed tutorial on how to pad and iron the bustier. So now this is what I have, and then now I'll come back to fix in my yoke. So I'll just, for the yoke, I'm just going to take I'll just flip it over and I'll take my net for the part that I cut for the front. Now when cutting the front, I added extra half an inch to the under the bottom part of it, because we are going to be leaving that half an inch aside. So now this is what I will do. I will take one part of this fabric and then I'll pin it all the way around. Notice that I went down by half an inch so that your net doesn't come out. You can also add extra 1 inch, and that 1 inch you will leave it to just come down. So I will do the same thing for the other side. I'll pin it round as well. So after pinning it round, now this is what I have. So this is, I just pin it all the way around, one to one side and one to the other side. Now for my back, this is what I'll also do. I'll just mark the part that I have added, and then I'll just pin it down as well. I'll do the same thing for the other side. Now take note, as you've sewn your front bustier, it's the same way you also go and sew your back. I've taken my darts for my back and my front and the lining part of it. So now this is what I have. I've gone ahead to sew it. Now this is what I have. So I sewed it on one side and sewed the other one on the other side. So for my back, I've gone ahead to sew it into it as well. So now I'll go ahead to join my back sides to sides and join the other part before going to fix the zip. So I'll join the sides and join the sides. I'll do the same thing for the lining as well. So everything you're doing for the fabric, you're doing for the lining except the padding. You're not padding the lining. But you can just add like one layer of interface or two to just make the lining thick if you are using a light lining. So now this is what I have. Now I'll go and use my lining now to cover it. After sewing and ironing, I'm going to use my lining now to cover it, and then I'll come to my sewing machine. But first of all, I'll fix my zip. Now I've already gone ahead to fix my zip at the back part, and I left 1 inch after fixing the zip. I left 1 inch before fixing it. That place should not get, the zip should not get to the bottom, if not it will bulge. So now what I'll do is I'll face the lining to the main fabric this way. The middle part is going to join, it's going to touch the middle part of this fabric as well, and then I'll pin it all the way through. Just watch what I do. So I've gone ahead to iron my lining. Now this is what I'll do. The excess that I have here, I'm going to pin it to the excess that I have there, and then I'll pin it all the way through, and then I'll sew. So I'll first of all sew this one, so that when I want to sew the other part, you will see what I'm doing. You might not be able to see it clear from this side. So now this is what I'm doing. The excess that I have, I just turned it inside, and then I'll sew all the way. By the time I flip it over, you will understand what I mean, and when I want to sew the other side, you will clearly see what I mean clearly. So I'm trying to take out my net while sewing. Make sure that it doesn't get into your net. You know that we've already joined the back and the front, so everything, you are going to sew everything all the way through to the back, your armhole, everywhere. You are sewing everything, and then you take out your net, and everything that you have, it's the same thing with the front and the back. So you are just going to use it to turn the lining. So when we get to the part that we have a zip, we'll just notch it a bit. We'll just notch it. No, we've already fixed the zip. Just notch it a bit so it doesn't pack. Okay, this part doesn't really need notching, but the time we turn it out, you can just notch it a little bit so that that part will lay flat by the time you turn it outside. You know, we've already fixed our zip through the net. So now I'll also sew it all the way down through the zipper. Make sure that it doesn't touch the zipper, just to cover the excess of the zipper, the excess allowance of the zipper. And then you can trim any excesses that you want to trim out. So I'll flip it over. So I'll go ahead and do the other part. Now this is what we have for this side. So you notice how we notch the zipper part so that it doesn't, because of those parts are folded inside. So now this is what we have on one side. Now look the way we did. We picked it one part to the other, and then we start sewing from the part that we have our plunge like this, and then we'll sew it all the way through, separating the net from the fabric and using the lining to just turn it all the way. You can just push in the bustier at this point so that it doesn't disturb you. So you just sew it all the way through, separating your net from the main fabric so you don't sew on your net. Now just notch that place to just separate a bit of the net before folding in and sewing. And as well, I will go back and sew on the zipper allowance. This side you can clearly see the thread, so you will not be able to sew on, you will not be sewing on your zip by mistake. So I just sewed all the way through to the down. Now that's all we have, and then we'll go to the ironing table and iron. Then after, now we'll sew around the bottom part. I could have just sewn around the bottom part from here, but I wanted to show you guys how it looked. So I'll sew around the bottom part, and then I will leave a little bit to just turn it over. But first of all, I'll go ahead to join my shoulder and fold in my excess. I'll cut off my zip and fold in the excess. So now this is what we have. I've turned it. Then I'll just go and iron it carefully on the ironing table. So now I'll take my shoulder and then I'll join my shoulder, and then I'll cut off the excess of my zip and then fold it in. Now I've gone ahead to join my shoulder, and then I went ahead to turn the bottom part all the way around, but I left an excess. On that excess, you can simply use your needle and thread to tack it, or you can even turn it from the zipper part. That one you don't even need to all this process. I just went ahead to put my hemming gum and sew it and just iron it, since it's just for tutorial purpose. But you can flip it through, sew it, and leave the opening through the zipper allowance and turn it all out, and then maybe use your needle and try to tack it after then. But this was how I did mine, and notice the zipper part, we left half an inch now after turning it for the bottom part of the zip. Now this was the final outcome of the dress. So hope you guys enjoyed this tutorial. Please kindly like and share and subscribe to this channel. We're bringing out more helpful and useful tutorials every week. If you enjoyed this tutorial, please give this video a thumbs up, like, share and comment. I'll see you in my next one. Bye guys.